I'm Kent, 37, single father of two amazing kids. Last Christmas, my mom threw us out of dinner after I spent $24,000 helping her throughout the year. "Your sister deserves it more," she said, slamming the door in our faces while my children sobbed. The betrayal cut deeper than any winter chill, so I made a decision that would change everything forever. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of real-life stories that might just heal your own wounds, too. Family is supposed to be your safe haven, but sometimes it's the place where you get hurt the most. My family has always been small. Just me, my mom, Evelyn, who's 65 now, and my younger sister, Stephanie, who's 32. Dad was in the picture until 5 years ago when cancer took him far too early at just 60. Growing up, I always felt the imbalance in how my mother treated us. Stephanie was her precious angel who could do no wrong. Me? I was the one who needed to toughen up and be more responsible. When Stephanie broke Mom's favorite vase, it was an accident. When I accidentally scratched her car, I was careless and ungrateful. These weren't isolated incidents. They formed a pattern that followed us into adulthood. I work as a mid-level manager at a technology company. The pay is decent, but by no means extravagant, especially in today's economy. 3 years ago, my world was turned upside down when Jessica, my wife of 11 years, decided that family life wasn't for her anymore. She left me with our 2 children, Ethan, who's 10 now, and Lily, who just turned 8, and moved across the country with her new boyfriend. The divorce was messy, and Jessica has been inconsistent with child support at best. Suddenly, becoming a single dad forced me to restructure my entire life. I had to negotiate flexible working hours, find reliable after-school care, and learn how to be both mom and dad. The kids were devastated naturally. Ethan became withdrawn and his grades suffered, while Lily developed anxiety about people leaving her. It took months of therapy and countless sleepless nights to get them to a more stable place emotionally. Through all this, I hoped my mother would step up as a supportive grandmother. Instead, her focus remained on Stephanie, who at 32 was still finding herself. Stephanie has bounced between jobs, retail, administrative work, multi-level marketing schemes, never sticking with anything for more than a few months. Yet according to Mom, Stephanie was always just about to make it big. When Dad passed away, he left a modest nest egg, about $100,000, and the family home that was fully paid off. Mom burned through most of the cash within 2 years, buying herself a new car, taking cruises with her friends, and of course, helping Stephanie out of her various financial crises. The real trouble started early this year. January wasn't even over when I got the first call. Mom's voice trembled as she told me her heating bill was overdue and she was worried about service being cut off in the middle of winter. Of course, I paid it immediately, $500 gone from my own tight budget. Then came February with a leaking roof that absolutely needed professional repair. March brought plumbing issues. April was medical bills from a bout of pneumonia. By May, I started noticing a pattern. Every crisis was urgent, every request prefaced with guilt-inducing statements about how hard it is to be alone, and every thank you followed by, "I don't know what I'd do without my son." All the while, Stephanie remained Mom's emotional confidant, but contributed nothing financially. When I gently suggest that perhaps Stephanie could help with some expenses, Mom would get defensive. "Your sister is struggling too, or she doesn't make as much as you or my personal favorite. She keeps me company, and that's worth more than money." The irony was painful. While Stephanie kept Mom company, I was the one juggling my job and parenting alone. Mornings in our house were a carefully orchestrated chaos, getting 2 kids fed, dressed, and emotionally prepared for school, while also getting myself ready for work. Evenings were a marathon of homework help, dinner preparation, baths, bedtime stories, and then finally collapsing into bed myself, only to start preparing lunches for the next day. Weekends weren't restful either. They were filled with grocery shopping, house cleaning, laundry, and trying to give my kids some semblance of fun and normalcy. I coached Ethan's soccer team on Saturdays and took Lily to her dance classes on Sundays. Every minute was accounted for, and personal time became a distant memory. The rare times Mom would visit our home, she'd make comments about the house not being clean enough or questioning why I bought expensive groceries when store brands are just as good. She never offered to help, not with cleaning, not with childcare, not with anything practical. But she'd spend hours showing the kids pictures of Stephanie's latest adventure or talking about how talented their aunt was. My children began to notice the disparity. One evening after Mom left, Ethan asked me, "Dad, why doesn't Grandma love us as much as she loves Aunt Stephanie?" That question broke something inside me, but I smiled through the pain and assured him that Grandma loved him very much, she just had a different way of showing it. The half-truth tasted bitter on my tongue. Despite everything, I kept hoping things would change. I desperately wanted my children to have a loving grandmother in their lives, especially after losing their mother's daily presence. So I continued to answer every call, solve every crisis, and empty my wallet whenever needed, setting myself up for the betrayal that would come at Christmas. As the year progressed, the financial requests from my mother grew both in frequency and amount. What started as occasional help with utility bills soon became major household expenses that drained my savings account at an alarming rate. February brought the first significant expense. Mom called me in tears, saying part of her roof had started leaking during a heavy rainstorm. "Water is coming into the spare bedroom," she sobbed. "Everything's going to be ruined." I immediately drove over during my lunch break to assess the damage. The water stain on the ceiling was unmistakable, and a small puddle had formed on the hardwood floor. I called several roofing companies for quotes, and the cheapest reputable one still came in at $5,000. They explained that the entire back section needed to be replaced, not just patched. When I showed Mom the quote, she looked at me with those expectant eyes I'd grown so familiar with. "I just don't have that kind of money, Kent," she said, her voice small. "Not after paying for the heating repairs last month." I thought about the college fund I'd been building for Ethan and Lily. I thought about the trip to Disney World I'd been promising them. Then I wrote the check. $5,000, gone. "You're such a good son," Mom said, hugging me tightly. "Once I get back on my feet, I'll make it up to you." In April, Mom developed a severe case of pneumonia. Despite having Medicare, her out-of-pocket costs were substantial. Specialist visits, prescription medications, and a brief hospital stay added up quickly. $3,600 more came out of my rapidly thinning savings account. During her recovery, I brought the kids to visit her every other day. We'd bring homemade soup and groceries. I'd clean her house while the kids would read to her or show her their schoolwork. Stephanie called once or twice but was too busy to visit in person. "Your sister has her own life," Mom defended when I mentioned it. "She's been calling me daily, you know. Her emotional support means everything." By June, Mom was facing credit card debt that she couldn't manage. She'd been using credit to cover gaps in her budget but could no longer make even the minimum payments on $4,200 of debt. The interest was compounding, and she was receiving collection calls. "I don't know how it got so out of hand," she admitted when showing me the statements. "I noticed charges for expensive restaurants, online shopping, and even a weekend spa package dated when she was supposedly too broke to pay her water bill. Many of the charges were for two people, Mom and Stephanie enjoying girls' days out, while I worked overtime to support my own family and now hers. I bit my tongue and paid off the cards, making Mom promise to cut them up. She agreed tearfully, thanking me profusely, and promising once again that she'd find a way to pay me back. Summer turned to fall, and as temperatures dropped, Mom called with news that her heating system was malfunctioning. "The repairman says it won't make it through another winter," she explained. "And while they're at it, they found some electrical issues that need to be fixed right away. It's a fire hazard, Kent." $7,500 later, Mom had a new heating system and updated electrical panel. This time, I had to dip into my $401k, taking a loan against my retirement. The penalty hurt almost as much as watching my financial security erode. Throughout the year, there were countless smaller expenses too. A refrigerator that suddenly stopped working, new tires for her car, property taxes she'd forgotten to budget for, dental work not covered by insurance. These minor costs added up to another $3,700. To cover these mounting expenses, I made sacrifices that affected not just me, but my children. I started working weekends twice a month, leaving the kids with a babysitter when they should have been spending quality time with their only present parent. I canceled our annual summer vacation, the second year in a row, replacing it with day trips to local attractions. I started buying groceries at discount stores and cutting corners wherever possible. One evening in October, After putting the kids to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with spreadsheets and bank statements scattered around me. The total was staggering: $24,000 in just 10 months. Nearly a third of my annual after-tax income gone to supporting my mother, who owned her home outright and should have been able to live comfortably on her Social Security and Dad's pension. Despite these financial sacrifices, there were concerning patterns I couldn't ignore. While pleading poverty to me, Mom somehow had money to buy Stephanie expensive birthday gifts, including a designer purse I happened to see when I stopped by unannounced. When questioned, Mom became defensive. I had a store credit, she claimed, though I knew better. Besides, Stephanie has been going through a rough patch. She needed something to cheer her up. My children started noticing the differences, too. After a visit to Grandma's house in November, Lily asked why Grandma had bought Aunt Stephanie a new iPad when she'd told Ethan she couldn't afford to buy him the science kit he'd been wanting for his birthday. I had no good answer. These observations led to tense conversations with my mother. During one such discussion in early December, I gently pointed out the disparity in how she treated her grandchildren compared to how she indulged Stephanie. "That's different," Mom snapped. "Stephanie is my daughter. She needs me in ways you never did. You've always been so independent, so capable. Stephanie is more vulnerable." "And what about your grandchildren?" I asked. "Don't they deserve equal love and attention?" Mom looked genuinely confused by the question. "Of course I love them, but Stephanie has always been more family-oriented. She calls me every day. She remembers all the little things I like." "When was the last time you called just to check in, not because you were dropping off the kids or I needed something fixed?" The conversation left me feeling hollow. In Mom's mind, my practical support, the thousands of dollars, the manual labor, the consistent presence, counted for less than Stephanie's phone calls and emotional performances. I was the reliable workhorse, taken for granted precisely because I could be counted on. Still, as December arrived and Christmas approached, I held on to hope that the holiday spirit might bring some warmth and appreciation back into our family dynamic. I couldn't have been more wrong. December arrived with its familiar blend of joy and stress. For a single parent, the holiday season is a delicate balancing act, creating magic for your children while managing limited time and resources. This year felt particularly challenging given how depleted my finances were after supporting Mom all year. Despite everything, I was determined to make this Christmas special. The kids had been through enough disappointment with their mother's absence and the canceled summer vacation. They deserved some genuine holiday joy. Early in the month, I took Ethan and Lily shopping for gifts for their grandmother. They were so excited to pick something special for her. "What about this, Dad?" Ethan held up a coffee mug with "World's Best Grandma" printed on it. "Or this?" Lily suggested, pointing to a soft lavender scarf. Their enthusiasm was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Despite the uneven treatment they received, they still loved their grandmother unconditionally, the way children do. We settled on the scarf for Mom and found a nice sweater for Aunt Stephanie. The kids insisted on spending some of their own allowance money on chocolate truffles for both of them, carefully counting out wrinkled dollar bills at the checkout counter. For my own gift to Mom, I'd selected a sterling silver bracelet with her birthstone. It cost $300. Money I shouldn't have spent given my financial situation, but I wanted to give her something meaningful, something that might bridge the growing gap between us. Evenings were spent at our kitchen table, where the kids crafted homemade Christmas cards with construction paper, glitter, and heartfelt messages written in their best handwriting. Ethan drew a picture of all of us together around a Christmas tree. Lily wrote, "I love you to the moon," and back inside her card for Grandma. "Do you think Grandma will put our cards on her refrigerator?" Lily asked, carefully applying another heart sticker. "I'm sure she will," I assured her, though I wondered if they'd receive the same prominence as the artwork Stephanie had created in her brief stint at a painting class last spring, which was framed and displayed in the living room. The weekend before Christmas, we baked together. I taught the kids how to make my father's famous apple pie, the dessert I'd be contributing to Christmas dinner. Dad had taught me the recipe when I was about Ethan's age, and making it felt like keeping a piece of him with us during the holidays. "Grandpa would be proud of you too," I told the kids, as they carefully arranged apple slices in the pie crust. "He always said the secret ingredient was love." "I wish we could remember him better," Ethan said quietly, concentrating on his task. "All I remember is his laugh." That was one of the best things about him, I said, feeling the familiar pang of grief. He had the best laugh. As Christmas approached, the kids grew more excited about the family dinner at Grandma's house. They remembered previous years, before Dad died, before their mother left, when Christmas had been a joyful, uncomplicated affair. They talked about Grandma's traditional turkey dinner and how Grandpa used to dress as Santa Claus. "Will Aunt Stephanie be there?" Ethan asked one night as I tucked him in. "Yes, she will," I confirmed. "Does she still not like us?" he asked, his voice small. The question caught me off guard. "What makes you think she doesn't like you?" Ethan shrugged. "She never talks to us when we visit Grandma. She's always on her phone. And last time I heard her tell Grandma that we're too noisy." I struggled to find the right words. "Sometimes adults get caught up in their own worlds," I said finally. "It doesn't mean she doesn't like you. Some people just aren't very comfortable around kids." I didn't tell him that Stephanie had always resented sharing attention, even as an adult. I didn't mention the text she'd sent me after Thanksgiving, complaining that my brats had dominated the conversation. Some truths aren't meant for children's ears. 2 days before Christmas, I met my friend Brian for a quick lunch. Brian and I had been friends since college, and he was one of the few people who understood my family dynamics. "How are you holding up?" he asked as we settled into our booth. "Hanging in there," I replied, though the exhaustion must have shown on my face. "Looking forward to Christmas with the family from hell?" His attempt at humor hit too close to home. I sighed. "I'm trying to stay positive for the kids. They're excited about spending Christmas Eve with their grandma. After everything you've done for her this year, I hope she's rolling out the red carpet for you guys," Brian said, shaking his head. $24,000, Kent, that's insane." "It's family," I said, the justification sounding hollow even to my own ears. "Family doesn't treat family like an ATM," Brian countered, "and they definitely don't play favorites with the grandkids. I've seen how she is with them, compared to how she talks about Stephanie." Deep down, I knew he was right, but admitting it felt like giving up on the idea of what family should be. Instead, I changed the subject, asking about his plans with his wife and in-laws. On December 23rd, Mom called to confirm dinner details. "We'll eat around 4, she said. "Oh, and can you bring some wine?" "Something nice, not that cheap stuff from the supermarket." "Sure, Mom," I agreed, adding another expense to my list. "And Kent," she added just before hanging up, "Stephanie has some big news to share. So let's make this extra special for her, okay?" That should have been my warning sign, but I missed it completely. Instead, I spent Christmas Eve helping the kids wrap their presents and prepare for what I thought would be a warm family gathering. We went to bed with visions of holiday joy, completely unaware of what awaited us the next day. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, with sunlight reflecting off fresh snow. The kids were up at 6, tearing into the presents under our modest tree with unrestrained joy. I'd had to be more careful with spending this year, but I'd managed to get them each a few things they really wanted: a new tablet for Ethan to replace his aging one, and a beginner's guitar for Lily, who had recently developed an interest in music. "This is the best Christmas ever, Dad," Lily exclaimed, hugging her new instrument. If only that feeling could have lasted through the day. We spent the morning playing with new toys and watching Christmas movies. I prepared the apple pie, taking extra care with the lattice crust. Around 2 o'clock, we started getting ready for dinner at Grandma's. The kids put on their best clothes. Ethan in a button-up shirt and khakis, Lily in the red dress with white collar she'd picked out specifically for the occasion. "You both look amazing," I told them, feeling a surge of pride as I helped Ethan with his tie. "Let's pack up the presents and pie and head over to Grandma's." The drive to Mom's house took 20 minutes. I'd splurged on 2 bottles of expensive wine as requested, and the kids carefully balanced the pie and presents on their laps. Christmas music played on the radio, and the kids sang along to Jingle Bells, their excitement palpable in the car. When we arrived, I immediately sensed something was off. Mom's driveway had several cars I didn't recognize. She hadn't mentioned other guests. I pushed down my unease as we approached the front door, presents and food in hand. Mom answered after the 3rd knock, greeting us with a distracted smile. "Oh, you're right on time," she said, stepping aside to let us in. There was none of the warm embrace I'd expected, no exclamations over how nice the kids looked. The house was filled with unfamiliar faces, friends of Mom's and Stephanie's I'd never met. In the living room, Stephanie sat like a queen on the sofa, beside a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard. "Kent, come meet Kyle," Mom called, waving me over. Stephanie's fiancé. Fiancé? This was the first I'd heard of any serious relationship, let alone an engagement. I pasted on a smile and walked over, kids trailing behind me. "Nice to meet you," I said, extending a hand. "This is Ethan and Lily." Kyle barely glanced at the children, giving my hand a limp shake. "Heard a lot about you," he said, though his tone suggested what he'd heard hadn't been flattering. Stephanie remained seated, not bothering to get up to greet her niece and nephew. "Hey," she said with a lazy wave. An enormous diamond sparkled on her left hand, a ring I'd never seen before. The next hour was awkward at best. The kids, sensing the strange atmosphere, stayed close to me instead of playing with the other children present, apparently friends of Kyle's family. Mom flitted between guests, stopping occasionally to fuss over Stephanie but barely acknowledging us. When gift exchange time came, the kids presented their carefully chosen presents to their grandmother and aunt. Mom opened the scarf with a quick, "Oh, how nice," before setting it aside. She didn't even read the handmade cards. Stephanie took one look at her sweater and mumbled a thanks while checking her phone. In contrast, when Mom presented Stephanie with her gift, an elegant blue velvet box, everyone was instructed to watch. Inside was a stunning diamond and sapphire ring that I immediately recognized as my grandmother's. "This has been in our family for 3 generations," Mom announced to the room. "And now it goes to Stephanie, because she deserves something this special." The implication hung in the air that I didn't deserve this family heirloom, nor did my children. Grandma's ring had always been promised to the first grandchild who got married. I'd received it when I married Jessica, but returned it after our divorce, as was family tradition. The understanding had always been that it would go to Ethan or Lily someday. Before I could process this, Stephanie stood up, still admiring her new ring. "Since everyone's here," she announced with a broad smile, "Kyle and I have news. We're having a baby." The room erupted in cheers and congratulations. Mom burst into tears of joy, embracing Stephanie and Kyle. "I'm going to be a grandmother again," she cried, apparently forgetting she already had 2 grandchildren standing right there. Ethan looked up at me, confusion and hurt in his eyes. I put my arm around his shoulders, giving him a reassuring squeeze. Then came the bombshell. Kyle cleared his throat. "We're also house hunting," he said. "With the baby coming, we need more space than our apartment." Mom stepped forward, beaming. "And I have a solution for that," she declared. "I've decided to sell this house and give Stephanie and Kyle the money for a down payment on their dream home. After all, they're starting a family and need the help." The room around me seemed to tilt. This was the house I grew up in. The house Dad and Mom had built together. The house Dad had explicitly told me would be mine after Mom no longer needed it, a promise made in front of both Mom and Stephanie. "You're selling the house?" I managed to ask, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Yes," Mom replied brightly. "It's too big for just me anyway. I'll get a nice little condo." "But what about Dad's promise?" The words escaped before I could stop them. "He wanted this house to stay in the family. He said it would come to me and the kids." Mom's expression hardened. "Your father isn't here anymore. This is my house now, and I'll do what I want with it. Stephanie and Kyle need it more than you do." "Need it more?" The absurdity of the statement broke through my shock. "Mom, I've put $24,000 into maintaining this house this year alone. The new roof, the heating system, the electrical work, all paid for by me." A hush fell over the room. Stephanie's eyes narrowed. "What's your point?" she asked coldly. "My point is that I've been supporting Mom financially all year. Every crisis, every repair bill, every unexpected expense, I covered it. I dipped into my children's college fund. I took a loan against my retirement. I canceled our vacation. And now you're selling the house to give her money?" Mom's face flushed with anger. "You're just doing what a son should do," she snapped. "Taking care of your mother. Stephanie has always been there for me emotionally. She calls me every day. She includes me in her life. You just throw money at problems and think that's enough." "I throw money at problems because that's what you ask for." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "Every single time you call, it's because you need money for something. When was the last time you called just to talk or to ask about your grandchildren?" The room had gone completely silent now, every guest watching our family drama unfold. Kyle put his arm around Stephanie, who had started to tear up. always her defense mechanism when confronted. "How dare you ruin Stephanie's special announcement," Mom hissed, stepping closer to me. "This is exactly why she deserves the house more than you. She appreciates family. You only think about yourself." I looked around the room, at the strangers watching us, at Kyle's smug expression, at Stephanie's crocodile tears, and finally at my children's frightened faces. Lily had started crying silently, clutching her father's hand. "Mom," I said quietly, "you've spent the entire year taking advantage of me financially. You've consistently favored Stephanie over me my entire life. And now you're extending that same favoritism to her future child over my existing children. I've tried to be understanding, but this crosses a line. If you don't like how I treat my family, you can leave," Mom replied, her voice ice cold. "Grandma, please don't be mad at Daddy," Lily spoke up, her small voice trembling. "We love you." Instead of softening at her granddaughter's plea, Mom's expression grew harder. "Kent, I think you should take the children and go. We'll have a much more pleasant Christmas without all this negativity." "Are you serious?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're throwing us out on Christmas Day?" "Yes, I am," she stated firmly. "Stephanie deserves a happy announcement day, and you're ruining it with your selfishness. Please leave." Stephanie smirked behind Mom's shoulder, making no attempt to defuse the situation. Kyle actually had the audacity to check his watch, as if calculating how soon we'd be gone. Stunned, I gathered our coats and our untouched presents. We hadn't even eaten dinner yet. The apple pie we'd made together sat on the kitchen counter, forgotten. As we walked to the door, Mom followed us. "I expected better from you, Kent," she said. "Stephanie has always been the more loving child. I thought you'd at least behave on Christmas." Before I could respond, she closed the door firmly in our faces. Through the door, I could hear her speaking to the other guests. "I'm so sorry about that unpleasantness. Now, let's get back to celebrating Stephanie and Kyle's wonderful news." Standing on the porch in the cold, with my children in tears beside me, I felt something break inside me, and something else harden into resolve. This would be the last time my mother used me or hurt my children. The last time Stephanie got away with her manipulative behavior. As we walked back to the car, I was already planning what would come next. The drive away from Mom's house passed in a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, while in the back seat, Ethan and Lily tried to understand what had just happened. Their quiet sniffles filled the car, replacing the cheerful Christmas music we'd been singing along to just hours before. "Why did Grandma make us leave, Daddy?" Lily's small voice cracked with confusion. I glanced in the rearview mirror at her tear-streaked face, my heart breaking all over again. How do you explain toxic family dynamics to an 8-year-old? How do you tell your children that their grandmother values their aunt more than them, and always has? "Grandma and I had a disagreement," I said carefully, trying to find age-appropriate words. "Sometimes adults don't handle disagreements very well." "But it's Christmas," Ethan said, sounding much younger than his 10 years. "Families are supposed to be together on Christmas." "You're right, buddy," I agreed, swallowing the lump in my throat. "That's how it should be." The cruel reality of what had just happened was sinking in. We'd been thrown out of Christmas dinner before we'd even eaten. My children had been rejected by their grandmother on what should have been one of the happiest days of the year. And for what? Because I'd dared to mention the financial support I'd provided? Because I'd questioned Mom's decision to sell the house she'd promised would stay in the family? I pulled into a gas station parking lot, needing a moment to collect myself before deciding where to go next. As I sat there, my phone buzzed with text messages. The first was from Stephanie. "Way to ruin Christmas with your jealousy. Mom's upset now because of you. Why couldn't you just be happy for me for once instead of making everything about yourself?" Then came one from Mom. "I'm very disappointed in your behavior today. You owe Stephanie an apology. Call me when you're ready to act like an adult." No concern for her grandchildren. No acknowledgement of how she'd hurt them. No recognition of the $24,000 I'd spent keeping her afloat this year. Just blame and disappointment because I hadn't silently accepted being used and discarded. "Dad?" Ethan's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "I'm hungry. We didn't get to eat at Grandma's." Reality came crashing back. It was Christmas Day. The kids hadn't had dinner. Everything would be closed. "Let's see what we can find," I said, starting the car again. After driving around for 20 minutes, we found a McDonald's that was open. Not exactly the Christmas dinner I'd planned for my children, but at that moment I was just grateful for somewhere warm where they could eat. We sat in a nearly empty restaurant, surrounded by festive decorations that now seemed to mock us. I watched as Ethan methodically separated his burger into components before reassembling it, something he did when anxious. Lily barely touched her chicken nuggets, pushing them around her tray instead. "Is Grandma mad at us?" Lily asked suddenly, looking up at me with wide, worried eyes. "No, sweetheart," I assured her quickly. "Grandma is upset with me, not with you." "But why? You didn't do anything wrong." The simplicity of her question caught me off guard. In her child's mind, the situation was clear. I hadn't done anything to deserve such treatment. If only adult relationships were so straightforward. "Sometimes people see things differently," I explained. "Grandma thinks I was being mean to Aunt Stephanie, but I was just trying to talk about something important." "About the money?" Ethan asked, proving he'd been paying more attention than I realized. I nodded. "Yes, about the money and about Grandpa's house. Grandpa wanted that house to stay in our family. He wanted you two to grow up visiting it, just like I did. And now Aunt Stephanie gets it instead?" Ethan's voice held an understanding beyond his years. "Because Grandma likes her better?" The blunt assessment stung with its accuracy. "It's complicated, buddy." "It doesn't seem complicated," he replied, returning to his burger. "It seems unfair." Out of the mouths of babes. My phone continued to buzz throughout our makeshift dinner. Stephanie had apparently rallied her allies. I received texts from two of Mom's friends who had been at the gathering, chastising me for making a scene and ruining Stephanie's special day. The narrative had already been established. I was the villain in this story. By the time we got home, it was only 7:30, but the day had drained us all. The kids' earlier excitement about their morning presents had evaporated, replaced by confusion and sadness. We settled on the couch and put on a Christmas movie, but none of us were really watching. Lily curled up against me, her small body occasionally shaking with suppressed sobs. Ethan sat stiffly on my other side, trying so hard to be strong. These were the moments when the absence of their mother hit hardest. When I wished there was another parent to help shoulder their pain, to offer a different kind of comfort than what I could provide. "Dad?" Lily asked as the movie credits rolled. "Does Grandma still love us?" The question pierced my heart like a knife. "Grandma loves you," I said automatically, but the words felt hollow even to me. Then why did she make us leave? Why did she say those mean things? Why doesn't she ever call us or come to my dance recitals? The questions tumbled out. Years of neglect suddenly crystallized in her young mind by today's rejection. I pulled her closer, searching for words that would comfort without lying. Sometimes adults, even grandparents, don't know how to show love the right way, I said finally. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It means they're making mistakes. Big mistakes, Ethan muttered. Yes, I acknowledged. Big mistakes. After tucking the kids into bed with extra hugs and reassurances, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of our morning celebration. Wrapping paper still littered the floor. The Christmas tree lights blinked in the darkness. It should have been a perfect day. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind raced with memories, years of subtle and not-so-subtle favoritism, of expectations placed on me while Stephanie was coddled, of sacrifices I'd made that were taken for granted. I thought about my father, wondering if he had seen this dynamic, and tried to correct for it with his promise about the house. I wondered what he would say if he could see how Mom had twisted his intentions. Around 3 in the morning, I found myself at the kitchen table with a legal pad, writing down every penny I'd given my mother this year. Every repair, every bill, every emergency. The total stared back at me. $24,700. Almost exactly what I'd put away for the kids' college fund before draining it for Mom's needs. Beside this list, I wrote another. The times Mom had been there for me and my kids this year. The column remained depressingly empty. No babysitting when I had to work late. No help when Ethan was sick and I had an important presentation. No birthday call for Lily. No support when the kids were struggling with their mother's absence. The imbalance was stark and undeniable. For years, I'd made excuses for it. Mom was grieving Dad. Mom was from a different generation. Mom showed love differently. But sitting there in my quiet kitchen in the early hours of Christmas morning, I finally admitted the truth I'd been avoiding. My mother's love was conditional, and the condition was that I accept second place in her heart. What hurt most wasn't my own pain. It was watching that same conditional love extend to my children. Seeing them realize that their cousin, not even born yet, would receive the warmth, attention, and resources that had been withheld from them. By dawn, exhaustion had given way to clarity. I couldn't change my mother or sister. I couldn't force them to value me or my children. But I could stop enabling the dysfunction. I could protect my kids from further rejection, and I could stand up for what was rightfully ours. As the first light of December 26th filtered through the kitchen window, I made a decision. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about dignity, respect, and justice. For me, and especially for my children. It was time to take a stand. The day after Christmas, while the kids were playing with their new toys, I made a phone call that would change everything. Diana Peterson had been my father's attorney and had helped me with my divorce 3 years ago. If anyone would know about Dad's wishes for the house, it would be her. "Kent, it's been a while," Diana greeted me warmly. "Not a legal emergency on the day after Christmas, I hope?" "Actually, it might be," I said. Then explained yesterday's events and Mom's plan to sell the family home. Diana was silent for a long moment after I finished. "Your father was very clear about his wishes," she said finally. "The house was to remain in your mother's name until her death, or until she no longer wanted to live there, at which point it would pass to you. This was documented in his will." "So she can't legally sell it?" I asked, hope rising. "Well, that's where it gets complicated," Diana replied. "If the house is solely in her name now, technically she can sell it. But if your father's will specified this arrangement, and she's violating those terms, we might have grounds to contest." "What about the money I've invested in the house this year?" I asked. "Does that give me any claim?" "Potentially, especially if you can prove the money was given as investments in the property rather than gifts to your mother." "Do you have documentation?" Thankfully, I did. Every check I'd written had a memo line specifying what it was for. Every bank transfer had accompanying emails or texts from Mom requesting funds for specific house repairs. I'd even taken before and after photos of the major renovations for insurance purposes. "I'll send everything over today," I promised. "And Diana, I want to keep this quiet for now. I don't want Mom to know we're looking into this until we have a solid case." My next call was to my bank. I spent an hour on the phone with a patient customer service representative, requesting statements from the entire year and officially flagging all transactions to my mother as disputed. The representative explained that while I couldn't reclaim the money directly through the bank, having an official record of the dispute would strengthen any legal case. After these calls, I sat down to compose the hardest email I'd ever written. I addressed it to my mother, copied Stephanie, and attached a spreadsheet detailing every cent I'd given them this year. "Mom," I began, "yesterday's events have forced me to reconsider our relationship and financial arrangements. This spreadsheet shows the $24,700 I have provided to support you this year, most of which went toward maintaining and improving the family home. Money that came from my children's college fund and my retirement savings. I've consulted with an attorney regarding Dad's will and his explicit wishes for the family home. Before taking legal action, I'm offering you a choice. Either acknowledge my investment in the property with a formal repayment agreement, or reconsider your plans to sell the house out from under us. Effective immediately, I will no longer be providing financial support of any kind. My responsibility is to my children, whose emotional and financial well-being must come first. I hope we can resolve this as a family, but I am prepared to pursue all legal avenues if necessary. Please respond by January 5th with your decision. Kent." I read the email 5 times before finally hitting send, my hand shaking slightly. It felt both terrifying and liberating to finally set boundaries after years of being taken advantage of. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. Mom called 3 times in succession, leaving increasingly angry voicemails. Stephanie sent a barrage of texts calling me selfish, greedy, and threatening to cut me off from the family completely, as if yesterday's events hadn't already done that. I silenced my phone and focused on my children, who deserved a father fully present with them during their school break. We spent the afternoon building Ethan's new Lego set and giving Lily her first guitar lesson. For a few hours, we were just a family enjoying time together, the drama temporarily at bay. That evening, After the kids were in bed, I made one more important call to my Aunt Martha, my father's sister. Aunt Martha and Mom had never gotten along well, which meant our contact had become limited after Dad died. Now I wondered if that distance had been by Mom's design rather than natural drift. "Kent?" Aunt Martha sounded surprised, but pleased to hear from me. "What a wonderful Christmas surprise. How are you and those beautiful children?" Her warmth was like a balm to my raw emotions. I found myself telling her everything: the financial drain of the past year, yesterday's disaster, and Mom's plan to sell the house. "That doesn't sound like what your father wanted at all," she said firmly. "Richard was very specific about that house staying in the family for you and your children." "That's what I remember too," I confirmed. "But Mom seems to think she can do whatever she wants with it now." Aunt Martha was quiet for a moment. "Kent, there's something you should know. Your father didn't trust your mother to honor his wishes completely. That's why he created a separate legal document, a trust, for certain assets. The house was meant to be part of that trust, with you as the beneficiary." This was news to me. "Are you sure?" "Diana didn't mention a trust. Diana might not know about it. Richard worked with another attorney for the trust, someone your mother didn't know. He was concerned that she might try to favor Stephanie, especially after he was gone. My father, it seemed, had understood the family dynamics better than I'd realized." "Do you know who this other attorney was?" "I don't remember the name, but I have it written down somewhere. I'll look through your father's things and call you tomorrow." After speaking with Aunt Martha, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was honoring my father's wishes and protecting my children's inheritance. Over the next week, a surprising thing happened. As word spread through the family about Christmas Day and the battle brewing over the house, relatives began reaching out, many taking my side. Dad's brothers and sisters, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, even Mom's own sister called to express support. "Your mother has always favored Stephanie," my cousin Jake said bluntly during our call. "The whole family has seen it, but no one wanted to say anything. It's about time someone stood up to her." It seemed that once one person was willing to name the dysfunction, others felt free to acknowledge it too. The family narratives began to shift, with more people questioning Mom's version of events. Aunt Martha came through with the information about the trust attorney, a Mr. Greenberg who still practiced in our city. A meeting with him confirmed what she had said. Dad had indeed created a trust that included the family home. The document specified that while Mom could live in the house for her lifetime, she could not sell it without my consent as the trust beneficiary. Mr. Greenberg was concerned that Mom had never mentioned the trust to me. "Your father was explicit that you were to be informed immediately after his passing," he explained. "I sent the paperwork to your mother. She was supposed to discuss it with you. Instead, she had buried it, likely hoping I would never find out." The betrayal stung, but it no longer surprised me. Armed with this information, I had Mr. Greenberg draft a formal letter to Mom, outlining the legal situation and making it clear that any attempt to sell the house would be blocked by the trust. I also included a repayment agreement for the money I'd invested in repairs, with reasonable terms that would allow her to pay me back gradually. The letter was delivered by courier on January 3rd. On January 4th, Mom showed up at my door. Mom stood on my doorstep, looking smaller than I remembered. The fury that had propelled her to throw us out on Christmas had been replaced by a calculating wariness. She clutched her purse tightly, knuckles white with tension. "We need to talk," she said simply. I glanced behind me, making sure the kids were occupied in the family room before stepping onto the porch and closing the door. Some conversations shouldn't happen in front of children. "I got the letter from the lawyer," she continued, her voice tight. "Your father had no right to set up that trust without telling me." "He had every right," I corrected her, "and you were supposed to tell me about it after he died. You deliberately kept me in the dark, Mom." She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I thought it was unnecessary. I never planned to sell the house back then." "Until Stephanie needed money," I said, not bothering to hide the bitterness in my voice. "She's starting a family," Mom insisted, though with less conviction than before. "She needs help. And I don't? A single father raising 2 kids alone? I've needed help for 3 years, Mom. Where was this generosity when I was struggling to pay for childcare or when the kids needed therapy after their mother left?" Mom had no answer for that. Instead, she changed tactics. "What do you want, Kent? You've made your point. You've embarrassed me in front of the family. Everyone's talking. I want what Dad wanted, I said firmly. The house stays in the trust for my children's future. And I want repayment for the money I've invested in it. Money that came from their college fund. I can't repay $24,000, she exclaimed. You know I don't have that kind of money. The repayment plan in the letter gives you 5 years, I reminded her. The monthly payments are reasonable, or you could agree to adjust the trust to reflect my investment as partial ownership now rather than later. She stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. You've changed, she said finally. You never used to stand up for yourself like this. I've had to change, I replied. I have 2 children depending on me. I can't let anyone take advantage of us anymore, not even you. 3 months passed before we reached a final resolution. During that time, my relationship with my mother remained strained but civil. We communicated primarily through attorneys, though we did have occasional direct conversations for the sake of the children. The legal proceedings revealed more than I had anticipated. Not only had Mom hidden the trust from me, but she had also been quietly transferring other assets to Stephanie over the years. Small sums from Dad's life insurance, family heirlooms that should have been divided equally, even furniture and art from my childhood home that had sentimental value. In the end, we reached a settlement that acknowledged reality while providing fairness. Mom would keep the house for her lifetime as originally intended, but the trust was amended to officially record my $24,000 investment as a percentage of ownership. Any future major expenses would be shared proportionally, and if the house were ever sold, I would recoup my investment first before the remaining proceeds were divided. More importantly, the settlement explicitly protected my children's inheritance rights. The trust now named Ethan and Lily directly as secondary beneficiaries, ensuring that even if something happened to me, they would not lose their claim. Stephanie refused to speak to me throughout the entire process. When the settlement was finalized, she sent one final text. Congratulations on tearing the family apart for money. Hope it was worth it. I didn't respond. Some relationships aren't worth saving. As spring bloomed, new beginnings emerged in unexpected places. Aunt Martha, now a more regular presence in our lives, suggested we use part of the settlement to invest in a small vacation property near the lake where Dad used to take me fishing. It wasn't as grand as the family home, but it was something that could be ours, completely placed to build new traditions and memories untainted by the past. Mom continued to live in the family house, though our visits became scheduled and brief rather than spontaneous. She made the minimum payments on our repayment agreement each month, never adding a personal note or reaching out beyond what was required. The emotional distance remained, but at least there were clear boundaries now. We need to talk, she said simply. Does this mean we're not family with Grandma anymore? Lily asked one evening as I tucked her in. We'll always be family, I assured her. But sometimes even family members need to take a step back from each other. It doesn't mean we don't love Grandma. It means we're giving everyone space to think about how we want to treat each other. Like a timeout, she suggested, making me smile. Something like that, I agreed. A timeout for grown-ups. The kids still saw their grandmother, but the visits were structured and supervised. I made sure they were never put in the middle of adult conflicts or made to feel that they were less valuable than their future cousin. When Stephanie gave birth to a baby boy in July, we sent a gift but did not attend the elaborate baby shower Mom organized. By the time the next Christmas approached, we had established new traditions. Instead of the tension-filled gathering at Mom's house, we spent Christmas Eve with Aunt Martha and her family, where the kids were treated with genuine warmth and interest. On Christmas morning, we opened presents at our home, and in the afternoon, we volunteered at a local shelter serving meals, a reminder that family isn't always about blood relations, but can be about the community we choose to build. The most valuable gift from this painful journey was the lesson it taught me about setting boundaries. For years, I had accepted being second best in my mother's eyes, had tolerated the favoritism shown to my sister, had given and given without expecting fairness in return. I had done this partly out of love, partly out of obligation, and partly out of a deep-seated belief that if I just did enough, I would finally earn the approval I craved. It took seeing that same pattern extending to my innocent children, watching them internalize the message that they were somehow less deserving of love and resources, to finally break the cycle. My responsibility to protect them became the courage I needed to protect myself as well. True love, I realized, doesn't demand that you empty yourself to fill others. It doesn't rank people in order of worthiness. It doesn't withhold itself when you speak your truth. The conditional love my mother offered wasn't really love at all. It was a transaction, a system of rewards and punishments designed to maintain control. By contrast, what I felt for my children was boundless and unconditional. I would move mountains for them, but I would never use that love to manipulate them or make them compete for my affection. I wanted them to grow up knowing their value wasn't dependent on what they could provide or how well they pleased others. That Christmas day when my mother slammed the door in our faces became a turning point rather than an ending. It was the moment I stopped accepting scraps from the family table and started building my own. It was when I finally understood that walking away from toxic relationships, even family ones, isn't selfish but sometimes necessary for healing. Sometimes the greatest act of love is setting someone free from expectations they cannot or will not meet. I set my mother free from my hope that she would ever love me equally. I set myself free from the endless cycle of giving without receiving. And most importantly, I set my children free from inheriting this dysfunctional pattern. The $24,000 that started this journey was never really about the money. It was about recognition, fairness, and honoring commitments. It was about teaching my children that their worth is innate and not determined by someone else's arbitrary judgment. Today, our lives are quieter but more authentic. The relationship with my mother remains complicated. Perhaps it always will be. But now it exists within boundaries that protect all of us from the worst patterns of the past. My children are thriving in this new reality, growing into confident, compassionate individuals who know their own worth. Sometimes the most valuable gift isn't what you receive, but what you find the courage to release. In letting go of the fantasy of a perfect family, I found something better, the truth of who we really are, and the freedom to build something healthier from that honest foundation. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members for your own well-being or your children's? How did you handle the fallout? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and growth. And if you know someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics, consider sharing this story. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these challenges is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening, and remember that choosing your own path doesn't mean you've failed at family. It means you're brave enough to create one that truly nurtures everyone involved.